Sri Sachidananda Sadguru Sainath Maharaj Ki Jai. Sai Baba of Shirdi and His Teachings by Parama Puja Acharya Sri Kirala Bharadwaja Garu. Chapter 1, The Heart of Teaching. If we study the life of Sai Baba carefully, we can gather invaluable guidance in the art of living. Indeed, even the study and analysis of the teachings may not be able to afford us such a rich pleasure of wisdom. Even the most comprehensive and authoritative textbooks on the science of medicine may not prove as useful as the attention of an expert physician. That the fruits of a life lived in accordance with those principles we learn from his way of life are embodied as a promise in the immensity of his own spiritual stature, while his teachings apparently point to different aspects of spiritual life. We find a beautiful synthesis of all of them in his life, and this synthesis affords us something much more than what individual teachings put together. For the whole is always something more than its parts put together. There is harmony in proportion. A delicious dish of food is something more than a mixture of several ingredients in terms of its taste, flavor, and perhaps the nutritive value also. Once we study his life with a discerning eye, we cannot refrain from reflecting the contemplating the same, and more we reflect, the more we discover ever new dimensions and nonsenses. And without any conscious effort on our part, similar tendencies of thought following action ingrain themselves in us. Thus, a subtle and imperceptible, a positive transformation, a kind of spiritual alchemy takes place in our being. It is to be noted that any genuine development in us is bound to be unconscious, and only at the end of the long process, if ever we feel like to look back to our own past, we will be able to appreciate the difference. Otherwise, a profound peace and a good sense of harmony with the whole of existence pulsates as of our life, and moments pass with a sense of new realization, a sense of novelty. We will be able to see the eternal novelty of all existence. Any other forms of development which is self conscious is at best spectacular and artificial, hence, it does not last. Every peak experience is bound to be followed by depression. The basic attitude of Sai Baba to life and all existence is expressed by the one phrase which he apparently uttered every now and then, Allah Malik. The more deeply we understand it, the more our being approximates with the same. It is the summing up of the quintessence of all world's religions. Let us ponder on its meaning. Everything in nature is a product, the manifestation of all forces in nature, and in turn acts in accordance with the laws of nature, which are innate to that class of things. Even our body, with all its change and mind, that is, everything within us, is the result of interaction of the natural forces, and they do act according to their own laws. We can say that nature itself assumes all these forms within us and without us and functions accordingly. There is nothing that is our own in all this. The whole of nature, with all its infinite variety of things and phenomena, is a result of a manifestation of a subtle and mysterious force or energy which religions term God. Everything in existence is a product and manifestation of that divine spirit, its possession. Everything in God's own, and nothing, including our body and mind, is ours. For even they, that is, we belong to Him. That is the purport of that pithy phrase. Losing sight of this fact is what constitutes ignorance or nescience, agnana, the veil that separates us from the truth. If we know this one truth and live in constant awareness of it, and through constant practice, if we can do so spontaneously, that state constitutes spiritual perfection. We no longer exist, only He exists within and without. This is the true significance of sannyasa of the Hindus and fakir of the Sufis, that is, the spiritual state of a perfect fakir. It is the poverty which the Christ has enjoined in the Sermon on the Mount when he said, Blessed are the poor in spirit. The total and the true picture of such a stage is perfect master. Thus a Sadguru like Sai Baba is the goal and the way and also the truth. Then the question may arise, if all things in existence are so natural and divine, is not our ignorance or nescience also such? On the face of it, the question is absurd in the sense that under its shadow, life is a burden and a threat from which we seek to escape every moment of our lives into the world of fancies, fantasies, hopes, and recollections, pastimes, and gossip. Had ignorance been something natural, the life as we are living it could not have been a struggle, a tale of unfulfilled wishes, frustrated hopes, shattered illusions, and shams. It would have been unobtrusive and spontaneous as a process of breathing. Our desperate need to be somebody, to be recognized, acclaimed, and thus to be reassured of our value as a human being would not have risen. For this implies a deep rooted feeling that we indeed are no such. The culprit in this is the tenth man in the story of the 10 wise men. 10 fools who were traveling together and they had to swim across a deep swelling river. Every one of them was concerned about the safety of everyone else in the whole group. So, after crossing the river, the first one counted the group and found it consisting only nine. One was missing. Everyone took a turn and arrived at the same conclusion. A shepherd inquired from them why they were so perturbed. When told about the missing man, he had a hearty laugh, for every fool in the group counted only the rest and forgot to count himself. As long as we are ignorant, we count for nothing, and that is the bitter tragedy of life. In the loving regard which we hope to gain from everyone around us, we find an attempt to drown this bitter awareness. How could such a state be natural to us? On the other hand, it is obtrusive, the one silent mischief maker that persistently robs us of every precious moment of peace and contentment and laughs sarcastically at every one of our attempts to achieve genuine joy. Once we are subject to the strange hold of ignorance or nescience, we are at its mercy, and mercy it has none at all. Possessiveness, jealousy, hate, suspicion, fear, and the whole pack of negative tendencies attack us with a dogged persistence. By every one of our attempts to foil them, we find that each of them robs us. We hate ourselves, sometimes pity ourselves, fear ourselves, and finally learn to tolerate ourselves. But in the meanwhile, we are already caught in the maze of circumstances created by the play of these negative forces, and there is no way out. By the time we are aware of what is happening, we have already set in the motion the causative factors leading to all the bitter situations that life can afford. We have made our lives miserable and the lives of the near and dear ones no less better. So is everyone around us doing. Most of our efforts at winning a little security and enjoying pleasures for ourselves, like our efforts to solve our problems, arise from this kingdom of ignorance. And often the results of our efforts are at variance with our wishes, or else, by the time we get the thing we want, we no longer want it. It turns out that it is not we thought it to be. The root cause for all this is that we are not what we think we are. We think we are what we wish to be for simple reason that we wish to be what we are not. And what are we? We are a not, no thing. The whole society is a teeming mass of such ignorant selves, ejecting clouds and clouds of pollution, material and spiritual. When situation becomes desperate under duress, man does what he ought to have done freely for the first time. We genuinely try to seek the meaning of life and of nature. Stripped of our illusions, we have a glimpse of what we are, that we are nothing. We learn that nothing within us, without us, is within our control. Those of us who have enough of vital strength go to the whole hog in quest of the answer, like the Buddha. They go in desperate search for peace and contentment. So too, Sai Baba said that once he, along with his three fellow seekers, debated regarding the means of attaining the spiritual illumination. The other three companions said that one should realize perfection by one's own efforts in the light of whatever wisdom they could gain from the study of philosophical texts. But Sai Baba said that one has necessarily resort to a perfect master, surrender one's will, body, and mind to him, and wait upon his grace in patience. At last, all of them went to a thick forest, perhaps in search of a suitable spot to pursue their meditations far away from the madding crowd. A woodcutter met them and said that it is not wise for the inexperienced young men to venture into the trackless forest without a guide. Above all, he wished to know what set them on such a reckless adventure. But the young man thought the illiterate laborer would not be able to appreciate their purpose and did not condescend to divulge it. But despite his boorish appearance, the woodcutter was full of love and affection for them. He suggested that they should at least accept his humble hospitality and offered them coarse food to eat. The young men probably thought that they were wise enough to know that man does not live on bread alone, that for those who set their eye on such a lofty goal, it is unbecoming to stoop so low as to accept the charity from a man of little understanding. They went ahead but soon lost their way. After wearily wandering about, they at last stumbled upon the spot where they first met the woodcutter. It would have been quite a frightening experience, for Baba said that it was by sheer stroke of fortune that they could at last arrive there again. The woodcutter accosted them and offered them his hospitality. Three of them felt it an insult to their injured pride to accept what they first rejected and went away. Baba recounted that they again lost their way and wandered endlessly in the forests, no longer in search of God or contentment, but in search of food and water. But on his own part of Sai Baba's heart was touched by the loving concern of the innocent soul for them who were at best strangers to him. The woodcutter seemed too innocent even to take the rejection of his loving offer to his heart. The unconditional acceptance of such pure love, Baba felt, is the proper beginning of spiritual life, and so he accepted food from the rustic. At once he found that it was not the laborer that stood in front of him, but the spiritual master who demanded what their earlier debate was about. After listening to it, he said, I will show you what you want if you would but follow me. But I tell you, only he who can completely trust what I say will be successful. Sai Baba bowed his head and followed him. In the service of Master, he became what he is. Thus, the very driving force behind the quest takes one to the threshold of realization. Nature and life, which are innately divine, are so made that they would start a man in the quest for the meaning of life, and it is for him to make the best of it. In at least a few cases, the Buddha, for instance, nature and life have proved themselves capable of driving man straight to enlightenment, even without the intermediacy of any perfect master. Nature itself has provided us with the mind intellect necessary to attain the goal of life, and even this belongs to God like everything else in nature. Those who have attained enlightenment by their own efforts, like the Buddha, or through a master, as did Sai Baba, have realized that there is nothing which is really their own, not even the self, that the illusory self, with all its strain of negative forces, is the chief culprit in the mess of life. Sai Baba has summed up the experience of all the great masters in the short phrase Allah Malik. To this realization, he owed everything, and he often remembered it with all the gratitude. Perhaps he intended that we should catch the hint and thereby realize our own destinies. Once we are able to contemplate the full implication of this phrase and thus loosen the grip of ignorance in the nescience, even temporarily, we find that our heart is freed from the pull of these negative thoughts and feelings. We are at peace, and for the first time, we realize with all the gratitude we are capable of the immense value of a perfect master who not only reaches, reaches out such a profound truth in such casual manner, but also lives in the fullest realization of it every moment of his life. The weariness and agony of life, along with the incessant and gnawing concern for survival, vanish in that moment as a dream does on waking up. The value of the Guru's gift of a word grips our entire being in utter love and gratitude. Henceforth, we cannot help but live in Him. His continuous presence in our awareness future further strengthens the peace and contentment, and to that extent prevent our slipping back into our habitual life of ignorance. Henceforth, nothing seems worthy of our attention and love than Guru, as it did to Sai Baba. Indeed, a devotee like Mrs. Manager has recorded precisely similar impressions of Sai Baba's presence. Very few, like the Buddha, seem to reach perfection without the help of a guru. But this is an exception rather than a rule, for every few could muster the inner strength and perseverance necessary for such an endeavor. Besides, even Buddha is said to have acknowledged that his attainment was possible only because he served a number of Buddhas during his previous lives. In more recent times, we have the case of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi, who seemed to have realized itself with his own effort. One day, a visitor asked him whether a guru was absolutely necessary for self realization, and the Maharshi affirmed. Then the visitor asked how Maharshi himself could realize without the help of any guru. The latter replied that he too had a guru, though not in human form. But who that guru is, he never revealed. We have a similar case of the celebrated Avadhuta mentioned by Lord Krishna in the 11th skanda of the Bhagavata. He had 24 gurus, all of them are common things or persons we see in everyday life, but his hungry spirit could gather highest wisdom from each of them and ultimately realized himself. Obviously, the hunger for enlightenment came to him through the realization of the inner crisis we have mentioned earlier. He is a rare instance in which his is a rare instance in which either God on one hand or one's own self at the other is figuratively said to be a guru. It is the self which precipitates the inner crisis, which sets one on the quest. It is the self which thus causes avid hunger in teaching and wisdom, and it is also a learner in its hunger for its realization. It itself looks upon everybody in nature as a pregnant with the divine wisdom and ultimately realizes the self as having no distinct existence apart from which it is all, that is God. Thus, it can be said that the self is the guru. The same phenomenon can be prescribed in a different way. It is God in the form of self and environment that brings about crisis, spark quest, and sustains it by constant and teaching right up to the goal. But the key factor in the whole process is the relation, though tentative, of the learner and the source of learning or the guru. In the whole of his career, we see Sai Baba formulate the truth in this way. When the visitor wished to be accepted as a disciple of Sai Baba, the latter said that everyone need not have a guru and that one's own self could be the guru. And when it is implicitly followed with diligence, discrimination, and alertness, one could reach the goal. Evidently, this kind of formulation is fitting for the particular temperament of the seeker. But there is subtle twist in this formulation. It needed the authority of Sai Baba and his statement for the principle to be impressed on the seeker's heart with all the force of teaching, and teaching it is. He needed such and he got it. Sai Baba proved himself the matchless teacher. He teaches while refusing to be the crutch on which the seeker in question would shift his own responsibility. It often happens that the ignorant child asks for what he cannot digest or what does not suit him, but the wise mother has to intelligently put him off, and thereby it is for him what it is in his best interests. It is imperative that the mother should know better than the child, and that at the same time hide the fact through the skill and presence of mind. While actually playing the judge and teacher, she keeps calmly to her image of the mother. Thus, in fact, Sai Baba accepted the visitor as a disciple and gave him the teaching, and deftly ensured that the man would have to cling desperately to the teaching, which is essential nature of a guru. As an answer, accessory, and preaching, he told the man to remember that every action, either mental or physical, will be regularly be followed by the consequences, which he would have to accept, for it is part of human nature that we persist in doing what we like and but would like to have the fruit of discipline and wise action and wise effort. As a great mystic put it, the substance of most in petitioning prayers is that two and two shall not equal four, and it is such of us that would like to make God and the Guru our crutches in the hope that they would enable us to reach the goal without our having to strive for the correction of our lameness. Fire cannot help to burn and light cannot help to illumine. Sai Baba the Master cannot help to discharge the function of a teacher to anyone who contacts him at any level and in any form, to hear of him, to think of him, and even to casually look at his picture is to be swallowed up in the teeming army of his beloved children. Thus, we see when a visitor arrived from Bombay for the first time at Shirdi and bowed to him, the master said, I know this fellow since 4 years. The man at first marveled, but later remembered that precisely 4 years earlier he heard of Sai Baba's glory and bowed to his picture in Bombay, and even at that moment, the man discovered that he was accepted. No one need ask God for air to breathe or water to drink. It is easy to see that the visitor who was directed to rely in his own self as the Guru and to keep in view the rigorous law of karma would go through would go through every one of life's experiences in the like fashion, and whenever he forgets it, however minor, the pinprick of life would be reminder, and in every context, the matchless teacher too would flash his memory along with the teaching. That is, from moment to moment, life would be the voice of the teacher, for it is from his authority that the teaching derived its sharpness and depth of impression. Even in his case, the Allah or God is the Malik or Lord that has drawn him to the teacher par excellence, and the teacher is the voice or the word of the Lord made flesh for the devotee's sake, the one who directs his future to the essential principle of living. A true savior is one who does not insist upon the safety but constantly recognize him as such, as most fake gurus would have it. When the health of an old person is restored to its fullest vigor, even the memories of his earlier ailment would seem unreal. But on the other hand, if any such continues to alive under the weight of those horrible recollections, the ailment is hardly cured. It has only been shifted to a subtle plane of the mind, and the vital energy has not been restored to its fullness. The basic fact remains that even in the case of such teaching as denial or a need for a guru is a must. In his turn, a perfect guru is one in whom the self has already ceased to exist, and he alone lives and lives through compassionate concern for those who are desperately searching for the way out. Thus, the Guru is the truth, the way, and the life. He is the greatest, the Savior. He is the Word made flesh. It is to teach us to be the sons of God, the inheritors of every one of the Lord's divine attributes that they come. He is the Buddha to whom one has to surrender. He is the Dharma or the way to which one has to surrender, and he, as in the dweller of the hearts of his devotees, that has to grant him right association, or the Sangha that provides the most congenial medium of unobstructed and undelayed growth into spiritual perfection, unto which he would do well to surrender. He is the Kshatriya, he is the Sotriya, the knower of the scriptures, and the Brahmanishta, or the one who ever lives in the unflickering awareness or realization and thus fulfills the scriptures, and whom Upanishads have enjoined surrender. He is the Mukurab, one of those who are nearer to God, mentioned in the Quran. That is, not only who is rightly guided by the Lord, but also one who knows the right relationship between Hak, reality, and Khalak, world of demon. The Quran, while teaching through the voice of Prophet, directs those who doubt to verify the truth from the Mukurabs, from those who remember. It is worthwhile to ponder a little on the impact of teaching Allah Malik on the hearts of those who received it. The basic urge of life is to wish and strive for pleasure and to endeavor to ward off pain. Under the influence of this twin urge, man learned to view things and to associate them with the pleasure or pain that did arise from them. Society and culture teach him to look upon things, persons, and possessions as the source of security and pleasure, or otherwise, henceforth, his life would be an enslavement to this, an endless need to go on to the appeasing them, which is essence great, degrading and humiliating him. He has to live as their slave to keep up the illusion that he is the master, and thus life is a long path of slavery and dependence. Besides, with regard to nature and the whole of existence, man has a sense of mystery, which is most important factor in the enchantment of life. Such a sense of mystery is not necessarily the mark of ignorance and that of primitive tribal element in mind. It is that which is human and sublimely so in man. It sets man on the quest of truth. It is the source of inspiration of all art, of literature, of science and religion. But it means man looks upon every natural phenomena as a divine force or a deity and he hopes to appease them in his attempts to secure pleasure and to ward off pain and loss. Though such an attitude need not necessarily be mere superstition, but when man's fear and hope of them is disproportionate, that is, when it lacks insight of the one supreme Godhead which orders them, it itself had developed into superficial enslavement of oneself. In such a situation, they are an added burden to his soul, which is already weighed down by countless enslavements in his social and cultural life of the world. Dread and terror can be dominant features of their attitude to life. When such a one is reminded that Allah is the Malik and that these deities, along with the things, persons, and situations of worldly life, are too subservient to His will or that He alone is the Lord, the whole weight is lifted off his heart. He is a slave to none except to God. His nagging weakness gives place to a new strength and a sense of self respect. Fear gives place to hope and independence. The foggy, trackless sense of surrounding terror gives way to recognition of well laid track leading upon up to one's home in the Lord. Now all things, persons, situations, and even deities are his fellow beings, partakers of the common adventure of the life, and their mutual relation is one of loving give and take and none of dependence. Such a one stops looking upon life as an endless sequence of joys, sorrows, and threats and starts welcoming them as the punctuated voice of the Master, full of love and admonitions and ceaseless watching on one's spiritual needs and transformation. Allah is not only the Malik, and ours is not a mere enslavement, it is slavery of love, and the spontaneous slavery of love, a willing surrender to the rapture of the mother's loving caress. Be it a pinch or a kiss, it only tickles. However rosy the above picture may appear, can every one of us live in its awareness? Is there any certainty about it, or do we waver between this love and the possibility of being a rosy piece and self deceptive? It is at such crucial moments that the learning image of the Master is one's heart sustains him. For in him we can see a spontaneous loving in its certainty. For instance, one day Sai Baba was laid up with the severest attack of asthma. He could hardly sit, eat, or even breathe, and the devotees feared that the dreaded end was high. One of them actually started weeping and requested him to accept medical existence. Fie upon you! Why do you weep? Allah have given me this, and He will take it away in a few days. He alone is my physician and nurse, said Baba. Indeed, in 3 or 4 days, he was completely through from the ailment. Occasionally, too, the devotees observed that he refused to give udi or sacred ash to some or rejected the dakshina money offering which they offered to make. When asked about it, Baba used to say that God did not permit him either to give udi to that particular devotee or to accept the offerings of another. So, devotees found that he always lived in the continuous awareness that Allah is the Malik and he had no will of his own. The repeated study of his life impresses with such precious lessons on our heart. And finally, whenever we waver, we have a steady reminder of the fact in mind, for he lived in such continuous awareness of it that is proper to look upon that expression as his essential nature and therefore his divine name. His form, therefore, is the visible body of his teachings again, Word made flesh, the way and the truth and the true life. when we thus associate his form with his basic teachings, as indeed it ought to be done, even as illumination is associated with light. The contemplation of his form or even of his life spontaneously becomes the contemplation of his teachings. Slowly and gradually, we imbibe the same attitude. This silent communication between the hearts is the real teaching, and wherever we are, here He is with us. Fine as this whole scheme of sadhana is, how many of us would be able to attain perfection thereby? In this, everything seems to rest with us. We can make of it what we can. How willing and ready are we? And this eagerness shows itself in the way we think and act. Do we wish to eat the cake and have it too? That is, do we naively hope to make the best of the both worlds? That is, do we insist on living as our own regenerate selves and wished and hope that He would do sadhana on our behalf, but credit the fruits thereof to our account? Such an attitude only shows that our earning is not genuine, that we indeed hope for all those things in life which we imagine would give us security and pleasure, and would persist in our illusion that we could get what we want. By treating the path of worldly life with all the enslavements we have mentioned earlier is the characteristic of the unregenerate way of living, from which the ringing call of the Master Allah Malik tries to awaken in us. When we have sold our whole self to this way of living, we indeed are left with nothing to offer the Sadguru, and our conception of the Guru is nothing but an abstraction, a collective form of all our lay enslavement and hopes. To such, though unconsciously, Sai Baba is another form of either the glittering call, or the soft comforts of fame and authority. It is natural that in such a heart, even that form of guru is bound to be an unstable, insufficient, and therefore the symbol of what he is not. Naturally, we love him and hate him alternately, remember him only when we are sad with the underlined accusation that the source is he, for the simple reason that we are the source of our misery, and our conception of him is but a reflection of our own selves. This is what precisely Jesus Christ meant, what he said that he would not save his devotee who merely went on saying, Lord, Lord, without either bothering to put any of his teaching into practice, that such a one is like a man who builds mansions on a sandy bed in a river, which would be washed away in times of flood. Such of us tend to justify our own stand by saying, did not Sai Baba say, sit quiet, I will take you right up to the goal? But the question is, do we sit quiet, leaving everything to Him? The choice of whatever we want in our life is ours, and it is only His essential teaching that we have left. The astute master, as he is the best course for him is to let life by our teacher, which may perhaps make us ready to learn the proper attitude at the appropriate time. It is regarding such of us that he gave the symbol of the mango tree in full bloom. How many of them grow into ripe fruit? Many of the flowers fall away, and many a tender fruit too may be on account of the wind or insects or the mischief of monkeys and the mischief of children. Even when a few of them grow into mature fruits, many of them have been eaten away as vegetable, and the stones inside them are eaten up by pigs. Very few of them remain to ripen, but even those few needed a little attention and protection. The truth is such, even with the regard of our devotion to the Guru and the fruits thereof, having thought on this much, he seems to say, the rest is with you. You are given the talent, whether you keep them buried in naivety or given a good account of them and thereby derive more, is left to you. Indeed, often Baba complained that he was eager to give away sumptuously from his limitless spiritual treasure, and that he did not find even one who wanted it. Have we then a right to ask, where and when of all of us who resort to him attain the goal? If anything, it is he that should ask us the question.
But the mother never would ask to the child whether he would deserve of her care and attention. She only gives and perhaps silently suffers and patiently bears with him if he does not make the best of it, and is inward too, even to sense of love that went into it. God and the Guru, who is a manifestation of his mercy for mankind, have taught us repeatedly that he is just and that his justice is an expression of his call of love for all. He has given us the way, the blessedness, and warned us sufficiently often of the fruits of our failure. He provides the standard warner in the Guru. All of that we ask to do is to free ourselves of all the burdens we pile upon our own back owing to lack of understanding. Often we imagine that even the power of understanding He is to bestow on us, but that He is already bestowed it on us is amply proved of the cunning we muster in our worldly life. It only means we are not willing to exercise it where it properly belongs. The Hindu, the Buddhist, and Jain scriptures have given us a detailed picture of right living that leads us to perfection, and also knowledge concerning the law of karma that governs us phenomenal life. The Bible and the Quran have given us the concept of judgment on the last day and laid down the proper way of life. The perfect masters are there as the tangible proof of the promised rewards of the right living. What else do we have to ask for? We can take the horse to the pond, but we cannot make it drink, is the most appropriate in this context. Now, the question confronts us: how many of us can realize or view or willing to really realize the goal, which is the association with Baba promises us? It is for us to answer and take it. If we say that man is by nature forgetful of the most precious things of life, we are advised to be associated with the Guru, study his life and teaching so that we may remember. Unless we undertake such a study, few of us can hope to derive the best from our contact either with Sai Baba or any great Sadguru with whom we happen to come in contact, for they constitute the proverbial hospitality and love with the rustic woodcutter had offered to Sai Baba and his three companions on their way to wilderness, and he who accepted it comes out of the wood to eternal safety. The rest have to keep wandering in the wilderness, not in search of what the great Guru alone can give, but in search of the fruits of their ignorance, of their own ignorance and mirages. That is why he repeatedly cautioned us: we have to accept the Guru, or else what will happen on us? We die, and dust into dust returns air into air. Such an opportunity may not come up again. Indeed, those of us who expect to awaken by the contact with a Sadguru, can we all hope to be awakened at all? Sleep a little, eat a little, and speak a little is another saying of the matchless Master. If we wake up, he will be there with us, although right up to the goal. All through, right up to the goal. Otherwise, even if he is with us, we are not with him, lost as we are in the world of our dreams and nightmares. It is of those who, even after having contacted him, have persisted in their sleep that we read in the account of his life. The two goats, the snake and the frog, for instance. One day, as Baba was returning from Lendi Bagh, a herd of goats was passing by. Two of the creatures, he said, looked at him. He at once purchased them for 32 rupees and brought them to Dwarka Mai, and the devotees were upset that he should pay such an exorbitant price for those unworthy creatures, which should be at best cost him 8 rupees. All of them vehemently argued with him and insisted that they should be returned. Baba kept quiet for some time and ultimately gave in. He ordered them to be returned but fed them sumptuously with pulses and fodder. Much later, as the devotee went on pondering why, in the full flock, the two particular goats should attract Baba's attention, he said that in their previous lives they were brothers who knew him, and but despite his counsel persisted in their jealousy and hatred regarding their possessions and ultimately assassinated each other. Baba recognized their association with him and could not help taking them to him. But could the poor creatures know anything of it all? They just got a good feeding from the loving fakir, but nothing more. Similarly, one day went out for the stroll in the morning to the neighboring streamlet and sat on the culvert smoking his pipe of tobacco. A devotee that was passing by bowed to him and sat by his side, sharing a puff or two from the pipe which the loving fakir offered. Suddenly he heard a shrill noise from among the bushes near his tree and asked Baba what it was. The latter told him that a frog was being swallowed up by a cobra. The man was curious, went and saw it for himself. He was anxious about the frog who was helpless. Sai Baba said, I have come here specifically to save the poor frog and I will not allow it to be swallowed. Now, note carefully how I do it. Even as the man anxiously tried to dissuade Baba from such a risky venture, Baba walked up to the bush and cried out, Fire upon both of you, O Channabasappa and Veerabhadrappa. Even after taking such despicable forms in this life, do you persist in your old hostilities? Let go and part. At once the cobra left the frog and rushed into the bush, while the poor prey leaped into the stream. The devotee was astonished. Baba then recounted that the two creatures were kinsmen in their previous lives, and how, despite his advice, bitterly fought for wealth which properly belonged to a house of God. When one of them threatened to axe the other, the latter sought Baba's protection. Their mutual hatred persisted beyond their natural deaths, and in consequence, they were born as these two creatures. But Baba keeps on his promise across the lines. But does either the frog or the snake know anything about the value of their association with Baba? Indeed, he always keeps his word, and we never. He always is with us, but we, on our part, drift in the world of our dreams, punctuated by the deepest slumber. In dream, perhaps we mutter, He has to bestow on us even the understanding. Nanavali, a queer celibate, came to Shirdi a few years before Sai Baba arrived there. As soon as they met for the first time, Nanavali blurted, Uncle, have you come? Perhaps of all the people, he also alone knew the supreme spiritual state of Baba and his mission, and perhaps it was not a time for the secret to put out. Hush, not a word, Baba warned, and the gruff, hefty young man never spoke out anything but divined of Baba. Every day he used to visit Baba every now and then, and with a thinly bow he would walk away. One day, when he met Sai Baba, the latter said, The treasure is locked up and the key is with you. I never speak the untruth. This is what Baba has got to say, all of us. Our spiritual slumber is the lock, and Sai Baba, the living embodiment and of the perpetual teaching Allah Malik, had given to us. What we do with the key is our wisdom. It was in this sense that he stated to other devotee named Chinnakisna Raju Sahib, the key of my treasure I keep in your hands. Ask for what you want. Chinnakisna was wise enough to ask for the only thing that matters. But what about the rest of us? Baba said, Everyone come to me with all absurd wishes and impossible desires. There is hardly one among you who is willing to receive all that I can give. Are we not asking Him all the time for freedom from ignorance and misery? Perhaps most of us do ask, but there is an asking and asking. Whenever the desire is heartfelt, we ask for the hand with all our being. We may put forth our petition vocally to those who can give in our worldly life. We try to do a good turn for them, and in the hope of obliging them, we may serve them along in the hope of disposing them favorably. We go here and there, leaving no stone unturned, and that is real asking. We may even betray those who love us if it seems to work. We brood over it night and day, then that becomes the main concern behind all our dealings and everyone. Are we asking Baba for the enlightenment in this manner when everything we do in our daily life is precisely opposed to whatever we say to Baba in this sense? Does it amount to asking? Do we not hope to see the only one who is concerned with our well being? Do we not thereby presume that he is a fool, a simpleton to take us on our word? If ever this thought occurs to us, we do not hesitate to hope that he would pardon this little bit of decency. Do we wish and hope that He should pluck us from the all necessary things of life we cling to and plant us forcibly to the depths of realization? Can we stand if He does? And do we not accuse him of having denied us everything that a common man wishes to have in life? There is no doubt about what would happen to us even if he chooses to do so. The native BD vendor rolls of BD means rolls of a kind of native leaf which is smoked like tobacco, often offered his fare to Baba as gifts. One fine morning, he had a fancy that the best thing to ask Baba would be his own state of fakiri, the Muslim renunciate who has taken a vow to voluntary poverty. Baba told him to be patient till the right moment, but the man insisted and pestered Baba beyond measure. One such day, Baba flung his empty fist towards him in gesture of throwing something at him and muttered something in Arabic. At once, the man's attitude and manner radically changed. He forgot all about his family, house, and business and wandered as a reckless, always muttering something to himself. People thought he went crazy and prayed to Baba to restore him. Baba told them to wait for the proper time. The villagers and the man's kinfolk found that almost every one of his stray utterings were coming true. One of his friends one day jeered at him and teased him, called him mad. The crazy fakir flung his empty fist towards him, saying, "You too become like me." Strangely, the second man too was transformed and he too wandered. A few weeks passed. One day he accosted Sai Baba at the mosque and submitted that he could no longer bear this state of fakiri. He desperately wanted to be relieved. Baba made another gesture as though plucking something invisible from him, saying, Lao bale idhar. And he was his former self instantaneously. He did not remember anything that transpired during that period and carried on his trade as usual. Most of us do not even have this much wisdom have this much of wisdom. We are like the wealthy man who one day drove to Shirdi in a hired tonga and urgently demanded of Baba, "I learned that you readily bestow realization on those who ask for it. The Lord has given all that I can wish for in my material life. If I get realization too, there is nothing more I need." As minutes passed by, he went on urging Baba and asking repeatedly, "I have to get back quickly and the hired Tonga man is waiting for me." Somehow, Baba managed to divert his attention with a little casual talk and sent one of his errand boys to fetch 5 rupees from a local businessman. But the businessman sent word that he was not at home. Baba sent the errand boy to a few places, but none would oblige. After a little while, the rich man resumed urging Baba to grant his wish. Baba at last smiled and said, "All the time I have been trying to teach you. Haven't you learnt anything? I have been desperately trying to secure 5 rupees. You remained a silent spectator while having 50 times more than I was asking for. But you would not give. It is so with this teaching also. As a begging fakir, I am not entitled to borrow money from anybody, for I cannot repay, and so no one would give. When I am not fit to borrow, you cannot give me anything, even when you have it in plenty. In order to gain self realization, one has to surrender the five. See Sai Baba Master, 4th edition, page 69 to 70. Realization is not for one who cannot do so. As per you, your God is the only the money you already have in plenty. The man realized his folly and returned. Can we say that he asked for Baba for what Baba was only too intelligent to give? Then we know what is it to ask truly. Then alone is the promise of the Master. Ask and that shall be given is valid for us. That is why Sai Baba once said, in the spiritual path, one has to exert with all his might. It is more difficult than even crossing the Nanhe Ghat on the back of a male buffalo. The man to whom these words were addressed had to cross a very steep mountain range called Nanhe Ghat, and he had to travel on the back of a male buffalo. The ride was more painful to the man. If enlightenment is so hard to get by, is it worthy while to try? The point is that when we truly want something, even the severest of the efforts seem as nothing, while even the minutest effort looks most exacting if our wish is not sincere. Then the question arises, if we put in all the efforts by ourselves, why do we need to resort to Sai Baba or any other master for that matter? Indeed, we have been exerting to our utmost all through our lives for this and that. Even the most ideal of men can be considered to have exerted himself to his maximum in search of a perfect idealness. We are asked to do nothing more than this. We are only told to direct our efforts in the right direction so that it would prove meaningful. Even the most ideal of men can be considered to have exerted himself to his maximum in search of perfect idealness. We are asked to do nothing more than this. We are only told to direct our efforts in the right direction so that it would prove meaningful. But there is another aspect to the question, which is similitude can explain better. If a boiling oil in a cauldron were to spill suddenly and we are constrained to take our feet off the ground instantaneously, would leaping into air help us? We just keep leaping and falling and face sliding. But if we would find a strong support above our heads to which we can hold and hang and perhaps pull ourselves up, now we ask, if all the pulling has to be done by ourselves, of what use is this support? The question which the master could ask us in return is, could all your willingness to pull yourself up help you if you were not supported overhead? There are only two alternatives. Either we hold on, pull ourselves by the support, or keep debating. Above all, what is the effort we are asked to put forth? Besides wholeheartedly remembering the total meaning of the piercing call, Allah Malik, the most important part of this effort is wholeheartedly remember Sai Baba the Master, who is the living embodiment of the central teaching. If instead we deep searching for alternative ways, we are bound to be frustrated. We are like the impatient man who went on digging a few feet here and feet there for drinking water. If we are going digging in one place, he is sure to strike water. Whatever alternative way we hope to adopt, common sense tells us that we cannot learn anything effectively without the guidance of one who has attained the goal in that way. So we are back to route 1. If Sai Baba refused to accept the hospitality held out to him gratis by the innocent laborer at first instance, ultimately he will have to accept it again on the next occasion or else run the risk of wandering aimlessly in the woods seeking nothing but water and food for the both. There is one more possibility, but which is far ours. Nowadays, there are masters and masters and masters of nothing. But self aggrandizement and advertisement, there are good public relations men with a whole army of agents. Addicted to the ways of the world, we are likely to choose the most advertised of the goods, and in matters of spirit, it is an iron rule that the most valuable goods are the least advertised. They have no sophisticated jargon of philosophical wordplay, no tapped voices, and not many picture albums of photogenic poses in some looking like Jesus Christ and in some like every conceivable master. Sai Baba the Guru and Sai Baba of Shirdi represented the true spiritual tradition. The fact that no light had to proclaim itself as such, nor did any delicious fruit. It is we that we have to recognize them for what they are and make up them for what we could. Let us remember that God is the most hidden of all things. God is the most hidden of all things. One of the most important things of our life, the common earth under our feet, the air we breathe, the last things that call for our attention. The infinite space, which contains myriads of galaxies, is the last thing we can ever notice, while the glittering stars and the bright sun, which are nothing more than a speck of dust, living not longer than a few break moments in the cosmic section of time, are the only things we commonly look up and wonder, twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Why not wonder what we are? Sai Baba, in his most unobtrusive way, has given us the necessary caution. A true fakir is very rare. But we have a plethora of gurus manufactured daily and hourly and in every corner of earth, every one of them running the rat race to make the tallest of the claims as the avatar, the messiah, and so on. Do we deserve anything better? No fruit bearing tree advertises itself, and God has left it to our own common sense to judge the tree by its fruit and not by its leaves and branches, while even the sturdiest of trees is by its leaves and branches. While even the sturdiest of trees is uprooted by the storm, the gentle and humble across the wind, humble to every foot that race it. But lo, at the end of the storm, it only remains nodding its head for the mankind to see and lament that in this mysterious universe, show of strength is weakness and humility is strength. Did not Christ show the way to right the judgment when he washed the feet of his disciples? The Sadguru is the father, mother, friend, master, and self is one. If he is the master of the whole creation, he is so only by willing to be the humblest slave of all creatures and the only trusted slave. And no slave advertises himself. How famous was the Guru whom Sai Baba served and who alone could give the precious gift of Sai Baba to mankind? Yuge Muge, he who knows keeps quiet, said Sai Baba. The Guru is the one in whom the whole universe exists, and he alone exists in the whole of the universe, and besides him, nothing else. So says the classic script that is dedicated expounding the nature of a true guru to mankind. Sri Guru Gita. How many of the Jewish prophets were recognized for they were in their times? Accepting that we are ready to follow Sai Baba, how long are we expected to serve before we reach the goal? Let us remember that we never ask in our daily life, how long are we to go on earning money and acquiring things? Except a sick mind, no one ever asks how long we are going to live or eat or breathe, how long we are to go on living or eating or breathing. The more the better, and God forbid it has an end. Does not this question indicate that at heart we hate the end and that we pretend to love most? Do we have a hope? In fact, this was the question that the rich man asked who returned empty handed from Baba, figuratively speaking. By implication, such a question never occurred to Sai Baba when he met and recognized his Guru, not even when he was suspended head downwards in the well. Else, what have we surrendered? Does genuine love ask how long one has to keep loving? The question is again either we want realization or we do not. It is for us to decide. None of the worthy disciples of any master ever asked his master such a question. They only felt that they could not serve better and love enough. Does it mean that we should give up everything else in life and stick to thinking of Sai Baba only? It is not too dear a price. If you think wisdom asks in return, have you not been sacrificing, dedicating all your efforts to the need of a moment every time in your life? Do you have everything? Do you have anything at all in your life for yourself? Or do you on trying to please everyone around you all the time to impress everyone? The Master is the only one who ever calls from us to have all for oneself, for the only thing that can give us lasting peace and contentment. The only thing that makes life worthwhile and stop feeling about. Baba has never advised anyone to do what we fear most. He only wanted us to go about with a sense of what it is all about, a little study and understanding. Sai Baba's Guru did not ask of him even to give him 2 paise in return for his teaching. And so Sai Baba does not make any such demand on us. He only tells us to be sensible in our life. When a father gives the most precious gift to his son, it is natural for his loving heart to caution the child against losing it through his carelessness. So too Sai Baba, who had bestowed this invaluable teaching, Allah Malik, also warned us there are thieves in the mansion. They can rob you of everything. It is necessary that we know each one of them. A thief is one who watchfully watches and for the moment when our attention is diverted from our treasure, knocks it away. Obviously, he is referring to all those little vanities of life which make us lose sight of the only source, the inner freedom, self confidence, and freedom from inside the teaching Allah Malik and its living manifestation Sai Baba. Once we forget these, we are instantaneously enslaved by everything else around us. That is why once he emphatically said, we must recognize Guru, else what are we here for to gather fuel for our funeral? Underlying the meaning of his principal teaching, he once said, the earth bears seeds, the clouds rain, and the sun affords light, but none of these stop their course. Are they joyous when the plants grow, or do they grieve when the plants with her? If you too learn to live like that, where is the room for sorrow? Freedom from sorrow is liberation. It means that clouds, sun, and earth have always been proclaiming Allah Malik, and there is nothing which is their own. We have eyes but do not see. We have ears but do not hear. We have minds but do not understand. Indeed, we are born free, but we insist on enchaining ourselves and we are scared to death of the only one who dares to remind us of it. But is it not too gloomy, pessimistic if we have to remember that nothing is our own? If this be so, Lord Krishna, Jesus Christ, the Buddha, Sai Baba, and Ramana Maharshi, the only ones that ever adored to be blissful, and who could be the inexhaustible sources of peace and contentment to all those myriads who are bogged down by their possessions or the like of them, should have been gloomiest of all the creatures. But were they? To know that there is nothing of our own is to recognize that even we are not our possession. We belong to Him. It is not we that exist, only He exists in us, and to Him everything belongs. By the same logic, to recognize that there is nothing of our own is to realize that everything is our own. The empty space to which nothing belongs is indeed a call to be wise regent of all that is and not to plod on as bond slaves. Can we at least know when we can be sure that our discipleship to Sai Baba has borne fruit, when we are no longer obligated to go on with it? Indeed, this was a question which arose in the mind of one Bapu Sahib Jogi, but he had the moral courage and necessity to formulate it in a most straightforward form. One day, when he sat in Dwarkamai, it suddenly occurred to him that it is said in scriptures that a perfect master would alchemize his disciple into his own life, in his own likeness. How is that he did not do so to me? Instantly, Sai Baba nudged a devotee sitting by him and pointed to Joge. He said, "Look here, this fellow wants to push me out of my seat and occupy it himself." Everyone was amazed and Job was frankly shocked. The meaning is quite clear. There can only be one perfect master of Sai Baba's stature at a time on earth for a whole cycle of time. Many saints of his time acknowledged him as the Kohinoor among all the saints. Swami Samartha of Akkalkot, the avatar of Lord Dattatreya, emphatically told his devotees in his last moments that his next avatar is Sai Baba of Shirdi, and Sai Baba too acknowledged it. The contemporary Indian saint Sri Ganapati Sachidananda of Mysore has said to Mr. Rangachari, "Do you know who Sai Baba is? He is an avatar of Lord Dattatreya. Nay, he is Lord Dattatreya himself." What does it mean? Meher Baba said that there would be 72 realized souls on earth at any time to monitor the spiritual destiny of mankind, and that five of them would be Sadgurus of higher hierarchy, and the Sai Baba of Shirdi is their emperor. He even said that if we could know of Sai Baba as he does, we would recognize him as the supreme guru of the whole universe. Jog realized his error and put his question more precisely as we did, and Sai Baba replied, "When you are able to renounce all attachments, don the kafni and live like me, then you can take it that your discipleship is fruitful. On the face of it looks exciting and easy, but the heart of the matter lies in our being able to live like Him. What does that mean? It means that we should be able to live up to the description of the Guru cited from the Guru Gita earlier, to live at one ment with all that exists. If we could be identical with all the Gurus, gods, living creatures, and all else, and when we can see that when our body is dead and buried, our tomb will speak to its devotees, which we can be a Muslim to Muslims and a Vedic scholar to Hindus, when we can be dead for 72 years and be alive again for decades after, when we can know of every lizard that ticks, every bitch that is beaten, and every pit that is humiliated, that is living like him. The kafni which he wore is not a sign of the vow of spiritual discipline he had undertaken. He was a fakir in the sense in which God Himself is a fakir. Everything in His, but He never possesses anything. He gives and gives, but never takes anything except for teaching us how to give. To ape him in mere external form without having the stuff is at best a mockery and symbol of real enslavement to that least available, least valuable of all worldly things, fame. There is one more aspect of it. With all his spiritual glory, Sai Baba was humblest to the humble and never claimed to be anything more than a slave of God, and that was his teaching too. He dressed and lived in the spirit of it. Often he said that whatever devotees think he was all result of his guru's blessings. It is said that one of the hallmark of a genuine guru is that he is the disciple of the another. Indeed, in the spiritual lore, one does not have a guru. He is figuratively described as an illegitimate child. No sane man would afford to be ashamed of owning his father, however despicable the latter may be, though it is much more humility to the illegitimate child, another man, however pious he might be, than to be legitimate child of a worthless man, and so it in the spiritual field. Unless we justly claim to be the disciples of Sai Baba, we cannot hope to live like him at any time, and it is not a simple thing. When a gentleman went on proclaiming himself as his disciple, Sai Baba admonished him, saying, whoever could claim to be my disciple among all thousands that come to me, I have not found one who could serve as I served my own master. How come then that he could be the avatar of Dattatreya when the latter is God himself as the Guru of all Gurus? If we study the story of Dattatreya in all his manifestations, one fact stands out predominantly. He always claimed to have won his spiritual glory through discipleship. Dattatreya is not only the ideal guru, the highest guru, but he was also the ideal disciple and the greatest of them. A man wanted an engineer to build a 50-storied mansion for him. The latter complained that he did not have the means of taking water up to the 5th story. Then the man said, what an engineer you are! First raise the 50th story, raise an overhead tank on it, and with water you can complete all the other stories. The miracle of the miracles, we have a plethora of gurus who had never been disciples. It may be true that in this page age, gravitation is not a great hurdle, but man still breeds and loves. A man who wanted to be accepted as a disciple by Guru, the Guru tried put off saying, how tough a task it is to be disciple than a master. The ambitious fool said, make me master instead. Then point is, no avatar of the Lord had ever gone a begging recognition as such. Even Lord Krishna, the greatest of avatars in Hindu religion, had never proclaimed himself as such. He only said that it to a very few, very intimate ones like Arjuna. To everyone else, he was a mere chauffeur of Arjuna in the battle and a predominant man in the Yadava clan. Though he was the kingmaker, he was never himself a king. He is depicted in Mahabharata to have assiduously followed his spiritual discipline, getting up early in the morning, attending to his ablutions, his daily meditation, and before he set out to touch the feet of all the elders and the learned, and with their blessings only he proceeded on his embassies. Like any other common mortal, he served his Guru Maharshi Sudhama in this dark age of Kali. The code of law that governs spiritual life seems to have been amended, and we may have many self styled avatars. A genuine avatar may be known by what he is and not by what he claims. None of the avatars of Lord Dattatreya ever claimed to be such. It is only the people and especially the posterity that has recognized them as such. Genuine fakirs are indeed hard to come by. Their one watchword and the hallmark of their whole life is summed up in the one short saying, Allah Malik. Jai